Beardy and the Beast, the second wall.
Ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba. This is a placeholder intro song.
Welcome to the second wall, binge-free zone where we look at a series and discuss it in small chunks. This time we are looking at Joss Whedon's sci-fi classic, Firefly. We can be found on most podcast and social media platforms, a full list of which can be found at beardyandthebeast.com. Please watch the episode and then join Drew and I in the mess as we explore the verse.
You know how you know that they're bad dudes?
How do you know they're bad dudes?
Because at the very beginning of the episode, they go, "I'm a bad dude, and if I want something, I'm gonna take it." So you know I'm a bad dude when I.
Yeah, and it wasn't the cargo.
No, it was just that always stuck out to me. The beginning of this episode, like even before I even, like on my original watch through, the fact that Buddy just kind of monologues. It's like, if it's something we need, we take it. And I'm like, that's kind of contrived. Like, you just need to introduce them as bad dudes. Like, it's not even relevant to the episode. They could have just done the thing.
Yeah. I don't know if contrived is necessarily the word I would use. I would say heavy-handed.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, because I mean, it makes sense. It's just a really heavy-handed way of introducing that.
They could have cut that entire scene out, and the episode would have made the exact same amount of sense.
They just needed a little bit of time. Actually, it would have made more sense if they had cut that out.
Probably.
Well, okay, because I guess we're starting world building this time. Because they capture Simon, a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
because they're trying to save the people in their village.
Oh yeah.
If they didn't have that line, you would have actually had, again, the gray that's happening throughout this.
Opposed to like these are bad dudes because they're bad dudes. They're skinning a rabbit and looking at spaceships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't quite get that decision, but is what it is.
It's just bad. This is bad writing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
oh, go ahead.
I mean, outside of the flashbacks and some like touching-ish moment here or there, the episode definitely feels very like strung along, like a lot of filler in between some very key points.
I mostly agree. I think this is partially just the issue with the 45-minute format that most of these shows were stuck to. Nowadays, if this was done on the Netflix, this would have been that, half-hour episode that we got at the end of Squid Game. Right? Because that's all you really needed.
It's something I noticed and can kind of like probably expand upon it when we talk about characters. I do like in the world building sense how they definitely kind of pushing into how hard it can be on these non-central worlds.
Yeah,
Especially
the other
like being in such a place that you pretty much have to like kidnap, forcefully conscript tradespeople and that, and like there's just insufficient doctors. And it's kind of that thing, like sometimes people get sick and most of the time they get better, and sometimes you need a doctor.
Yeah. It's really good show of that because every other time we've seen this, we've seen like the Wild West,
Mhm.
but we've never seen like what the consequences around that can be. So I do think they actually did that fairly well. Um, and they actually start giving you an idea of how isolated some of these planets and such can be from each other. You're like, oh, why isn't the Alliance here? It's like the closest ship's like 10 hours away. It's not going to happen. Um,
Well, this is the thing. This is something that was really well contrasted in that the cruiser Magellan had very decent or excellent medical facilities,
mhm,
and they were prepared just to like turn away someone who was actively dying in front of
yeah,
them.
yeah. Uh,
So they're obviously not helping out anyone on this planet.
yeah, exactly. And it's, I mean, it's a military ship. It's honestly, we don't know if they're strained for resources in any way.
Hmm.
Like, they don't seem that way, but they might be. Um, we haven't explored anything like that yet. Today, I think of things like, um,
We do know that they
or-
go on tours,
mm,
which means they like, especially if you're going to deep space, we don't know what cycles they are for refueling and like retrofitting and stuff.
yeah, they could very well just have limited resources themselves. Uh, and I mean, like we see that in things like Farscape, where you have even the peacekeepers did have resource issues sometimes, just not as much.
My I don't like the way that they express the military in the central planets. They really do kind of express it as a haves versus like have-nots
Yeah.
situation. Um, I mean, it's logical to say that they might be stint on resources or something, but the way they've set up the world makes me think you have to assume they have at least some capabilities and could help.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and either don't because they don't care, or don't because they're not ordered to, or don't because um, helping people in the outer planets is not a priority for the Alliance.
Yeah. I definitely get that because yeah, there's other things they could do. It's like, yeah, like I mean, I know here they have, yeah, and here's a bonus to get a doctorate in these rural towns because otherwise help's
Hmm.
an hour away, right? So I know there's things around that, but not something we've fully got to explore yet. Um, I think an interesting part around this as well, or just the rim planet itself. I'm surprised. Well, obviously not surprised, but it's interesting to see all of a sudden getting that like a very religious, like extremely religious town.
Hmm.
Because like, I mean, there's religion around. That's nothing new, but to have that zealotry, I found that interesting. I don't remember it necessarily being explored much more, and I don't know if I quite
No, it
understand.
makes sense when you're without and things are hard, having something to believe in.
Mm,
And you could tell that there was effectively two groups in that town. There was those who believed, and then those who used the belief for power.
mm.
So the patron of the town was using it for power, and the helpful nurse um, believed and was truly trying to help the people around her,
Yeah,
even if
I
she would
definitely
not
see
suffer a witch to live.
that. Yeah, but she's our witch.
But that honestly, I think it was mirrored some in the flashbacks though.
Mm,
Um, instead of having a religious faith, having a faith in status, standing, power.
yes. Um, I did pick up on some of that too. I do think there was, for instance, an episode that feels like it was a lot of filler. I do think they did a lot of decent juxtaposition with that. And I think we definitely get an idea of the core worlds a bit more.
Mhm.
Again, it is that very, for lack of a better term, urban, and I'm concerned more about the appearances and, you know, make sure you become the best doctor you can. And uh,
The I do get a feeling that this episode was probably one of the earlier written episodes,
mm,
as in when they were still discovering the format. Because
mm,
obviously, like, you'd write a bunch of stuff, but I doubt these were written in a this episode is first, we wrote it first kind of situation, and then moving on.
yeah,
Like, you um just the way it feels, the way that the communication is, and the way that there seemed to be more shots wasted than normal
mm,
made it feel kind of earlier draft comparatively to, say, the last episode, Shindig, right?
yeah, uh,
It's and it could just be time. They might have just needed to stall for time, because you can't introduce more,
yeah,
because you need to tie it to something. And this series apparently really likes to do contrast. If they're not doing it with an event, they're doing it with characters or even emotions.
hmm
Um,
yeah,
so it might just be as simple as that.
yeah,
It's just not the strongest written.
yeah. And it's not bad. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think there's definitely a lot of good within it, but I agree. Um, I know. I think we were talking off camera. We were like, you weren't sure what we'd have in the last episode necessarily to go on about. I was
Mm,
kind of feeling that this way for this one, um, because we just couldn't get the same interactions where we'd want, and like this is clearly the Tams
mhm,
focus episode, right? Like the last one was kind of Inara and Kaylee. This one here is Simon and River. Um, but because I think in a way they're so disconnected from the crew, you can't really pull in the rest of the crew in the same way that we could for Shindig.
mhm,
Now, with that being said, they did do a few things that immediately jumped at me. Um, One, using like this is where I'm getting that what's up with book. This is that
mhm.
confirmation of that feeling that always kind of there. Um, that works because it affects the plot, even though it doesn't affect the plot directly, right?
Mhm.
Okay, now we have to leave Simon and River because we have to go. We just don't have the time. We need to get Book saved. We didn't really get much from Book other than, okay, there's something more here, obviously, because they dropped everything when they found out who he was. Um, I think we got a nice bit with Anara again. I think just the little bit that she's there, she showed to me anyway that she's an equal to Kamal.
Mm.
When she's like, no, we have a way to save him. This is how. And they didn't like it, but she has that same commanding presence, which again goes back to the mirroring that we talked about.
I looked at that situation more as I don't think that option was off the table, but it just needed someone to say it.
Mm,
So someone having the presence to my mind to say it, to indicate it's the right choice.
yeah.
Um, to be that symbol of reason
Hmm.
in an uncertain circumstance. Um, and it seemed to me she would have fully known the potential results,
Yeah.
because it could have, for some reason, ended up in confiscation of the ship or arrest of everyone on board or any number of things.
Yeah.
And it seemed to me that having someone be able to approach Mel who would have already considered that, to say, no, that's the choice that needs to be made. That's what
Yeah.
we need to do. Yeah, I looked at it more about a voice of reason and uncertain time.
Yeah, I think with what you're saying, I think it's matching up with very similar to what I'm meaning. It's like you still need that person to step up to lead,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's not, and make that tough call. Like you can clearly lose everything, but you have the chance to save him,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which actually mirrors again into what we get with the Tams. I'm trying to think of how the best way to go about this because there's some interesting. Yeah, we'll think we'll save the Tams overall.
Yeah, they'll probably be the biggest arc.
Yeah.
I don't think Jane was written appropriately in this episode. He didn't seem to show any concern for Book.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and we already know that he does have attachments to the crew, even though like he won't show it. For
Yeah.
instance, when he was watching over Kaylee from like a dark corner when she was shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't. There's nothing to indicate animosity or indifference towards Book.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed to me that he was written in a surface level unlikable way in this episode.
So I mostly agree. I'm gonna put this is a little bit of headcanon from what we've seen of Jane in the previous episodes. And this actually could have been a way that they could have padded the time a little bit better. Was it's shown Jane's coping mechanism is move to the money, move to the materialistic part of it.
Mm.
So him going, but what about the money? Could have been that cope. And where I think like a slight change that they could have done was again have that same type of thing. Him crouching near while they're trying to work a book. I think that would have changed that enough. Him rooting through the Tams things, yeah, it's not too surprising. He doesn't have that attachment to them yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not so surprising. I think it plays a little bit too much on, and probably poisons the well a bit around how he was with Book too, is because now it made it look like he was just a vulture.
Yeah.
Where we've already seen that's not the case.
Yeah, it was. I mean, they could have tried a little harder in an episode that was really just a whole lot of series of coincidences, all revolving around one theme. I mean, Kaylee was fine. I mean, this was definitely not her episode. She wasn't like super important, except for some like introductory. I mean, that being said, they haven't really gone into her too much at all.
I think so. There was a little bit with Kaylee is that she didn't have much in this episode, but I mean, we have again her smitten over Simon, and obviously her love for the ship comes through, but she's really trying. And I think when you think of the beginning of this episode with Kaylee in context of Shindig, there's a bit more of a through line there. Because again, she's interested in the fancy things, the things she considers fancy, but it's so not her world that she doesn't understand that they're probably going to see it as kitsch.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I want to get this plate. I think it's really pretty, right? And Nara is very supportive. I think that's looking at the gesture.
Hmm.
So then, of course, when Simon comes, it's like, oh, this looks, this is garbage. It hits her hard, and I think it's just that idea again of Kaylee. She's young, right? And she feels young.
Hmm.
She feels like the youngest there. Um, River aside, because River's River. um, you can see she's young. She's still trying to find her way, and trying to navigate this world, trying to get the fancy college educated boy.
Hmm.
And we see her really trying to make an effort. It just doesn't get it, or doesn't understand why they don't get it, I guess, is a better way
Hmm.
to put that. We see a small interaction with that too when I guess talking about contrasts, her interaction with Inara about the swan,
Hmm.
right? It's like, yeah, like you could see like Inara is kind of like, it's just that type of thing, but Kaylee's like, oh, but this is why, and Inara encourages that. She sees that difference in how Inara or how Kaylee kind of sees the world.
Hmm.
And we contrast that with Simon right afterwards, where clearly he doesn't. um, so little character moments that pulled that reflection in. Another reflection I saw was again from Shindig. That's why I think there's a follow through in that. Is when Mal insulted Kaylee, he knew immediately and knew what he did,
Yeah.
even though he couldn't say anything. Simon was oblivious. He doesn't know what he did. Um,
Well, and then he tried to make excuses
yeah.
where Mel just shut up about it.
Yeah, exactly.
I did wrong. I'm quiet now.
Yeah. You also have, I mean, I think some of that's just the overall attachment to the crew,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, again, he cares about them. He makes that very clear. With Simon, it's like, well, why'd you come back? Part of my crew. Yeah, but why? You're part of my crew.
Why are we still talking about this?
Right. And again, it's just that stoic way that Mal handles things. Like, there's, if you weren't quite as dense as Simon, you might understand what he just said.
Well, I mean, and this is kind of a reoccurring theme that they go into over and over again in the series is what is home,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone's different feelings about what is home, but it's clear the ship is Kaylee's home. Um, it's clear that the crew is Mal's home. It's clear that Malcolm is Inara's home. um, but so it's one of the things that they covered in this, and they keep pushing towards. Um, and that's kind of what happened when Zoe was talking to Book. Um, they kind of outright said it when Book was like, "It's good to be home."
Yeah.
It's obvious that he's acclimate. That's not the wrong word, not the word I want to use. It's obvious that he's accustomed to that way of life and now understands his path and his belonging on that ship.
Yeah.
And this was it finally being shown to River and Simon.
Yeah.
And the nurse even said, um, if here is not home, then where is?
Yeah.
And that's kind of again contrasted with the flashbacks, where it was
Mhm.
clear that was Simon giving up his home.
Yeah.
Um, for something, I guess, more important, and he's found it with the crew, which is expressed by Malcolm.
Yeah, it's. I want to segue slightly. I want to continue on with the Simon thread, but I also want to finish up the home theory there. Uh, I really enjoy the fact that, again, that just family dinner. It feels like a family dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first time I actually noticed all of the chairs are mismatched.
Mm.
And it's just kind of like just this nice touch. It's, yeah, no, we'll pull up a new chair for you guys. You are the crew. Is kind of the feeling that I got from it. So I really enjoyed that. To kind of trying to think, do we have other characters to go into before we go into the Tams more?
No, they didn't like. So he had a cool line. We don't rush him for the little things. And Wash had like 3 lines.
Yeah.
It wasn't a Zoe Wash episode at all. Like, it wasn't
No.
even really a Kaylee and Nara one. They just Nara had an important line.
Yeah, just happened to connect.
Yeah.
So this is the episode to me that, I mean, they did this well. This is what saves Simon. This is what makes Simon actually a bit more relatable as a character overall. So we've kind of talked about that because, and they contrast everything around it very well in my mind. So we get him being mean and talking about the ship and, being a piece of trash and obviously doesn't care about people with that way of life. And you contrast that with what he's lost and what he's fairly recently lost. Like, we're probably couple months at this point still. I think we figured out last time.
I'd like to amend that term. I'd rather refer to it as gave up. Because I feel like lost would imply it was beyond his power.
From a objective standpoint, yes, he gave it up, but he's not at that point yet. At the beginning of this episode, he's lost everything.
No, I still think my analysis of the terminology is correct. And that's what makes the mirroring to like him being an asshat and not knowing about it, when it's directly contrasted with him knowing what he's doing and giving up everything in a act of altruism. It's directly in conflict with the attitude he showed towards Kaylee.
So I think there's, but some of that, I think it's that cope. So I think he willingly gave it up. He knows what he did there, but so logically he knows that, but from an emotional standpoint, it can still feel like he's lost it.
I don't know. Even in the earlier episodes, I didn't see anything implying that he felt that he lost.
I think that idea of, yeah. All right. Yeah. I think we're talking around the same point.
I just want to amend the term because like being very specific with the terminology, because he was fully within the power to retain. It was his choice to make. He made the right choice.
Oh, that's true. I don't think I think there still might just be some emotional confusion around that, or bitterness about the fact that he might have had to give some of that up. Maybe that's a better way to go with it. Just that emotional, because I mean, Stan, it's gonna hit hard. Your entire life was gone, so maybe bitterness to what he had to give up. And of course, it's not going to be directed at his sister, but it will be directed at a situation. And Kaylee and Serenity just happen to be the situation.
Well, it's one of the reasons why he often is at odds with Mel, is because
Mhm.
Mel is the representative of Serenity, which is um, effectively his current situation.
Yeah, but they and you see it because he he really did give up everything, um, everything for his sister. Uh, I mean, you even see it even though he was kidnapped, he had no issues just jumping in and being a doctor,
Mhm.
immediately, right? Until they yes, he was being sassy about it, but he was also not going to let them suffer.
Well,
Um,
they even expressed that like how important it was for him to be a doctor.
mhm.
Uh, so that's where the writing kind of fails a bit in this episode because they made it feel like it was something he was being pushed into, but then they also made it feel that it was something that he was passionate about. It's just the way that his dad communicated with him. It seemed like it was more like it was a family expectation.
Mm, and I think I think it depends on which flashback we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause definitely in the later flashbacks, I agree with you, but I think in the early flashback, the first flashback when they were kids, they he was interested in it and he wanted the better equipment because he was passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So yes, they keep pushing him for that, but is it pushing family expectations? Is it the family pushing him into that? Or are they encouraging that and pushing him because it's something he's interested in?
I tell you what, from a young age, these parents full well know how smart Simon and River are.
Mhm.
Like to the point where they sent River to like the most difficult educational program ever.
Yeah.
And they already have plans for Simon to be this like amazing best doctor ever.
Yeah.
But then when Simon says like no there's something wrong, they ignore him so incredibly and show how much more status is.
Mhm.
And like I don't know, I'd like to think any parent worth their salt would be like, well you think there's wrong and you're jeopardizing everything that you want because you think something's wrong. Maybe I'll give you a little bit of support. But instead it immediately goes to if this happens again I won't come for you.
So the if this happens again, I won't come for you part actually didn't bother me quite as much.
Well, I mean,
Um, like
it's on par for the character.
yeah, I mean I think some of that is just how parents can change in the view of a child as the child grows up. So you start seeing things. So we might have gotten a little bit of a rose-colored idea with the parents to what happened. Um, I mean, he might have been trying other things to do this, so this might have actually been a last straw around the status. The part that bothers me about these flashbacks, these interactions more so, is how dismissive they were about the letters. When he literally had to spell it, it's like you don't even read her letters.
Well, and
Because
that's
if you did, it would be obvious that something was wrong.
well, and that's foundational to the situation. Um, and like, I mean, we can't make assumptions because it's not stated, right? So
Mm,
they didn't state that like this keeps happening or he keeps getting in trouble for this. Um, but that's foundational to everything that I'm saying. So I should have probably started there.
yeah.
Um, and it just keeps compelling, like it's
Mm,
or not or compounding. It's like a
yeah.
snowball turning into like a giant snowball as it rolls downhill.
Yeah.
Um, first, it starts with them not even really reading the letters,
Mm,
and then it's all of a sudden to the point where they don't even trust their own son to know something's wrong, and he's supposed to be super smart.
yeah. It almost felt like we needed another middle scene there. But and again, that kind of goes back to the padding the runtime. Um, they might have been able to do something there, but I don't quite know how it would have worked narratively. Like, you just almost need, like, we have step 1, step 2, question mark, question mark, question mark, step 4, profit.
Well, I mean, with
What was step 3?
they definitely could have taken some of that time, just by removing the Jane like stealing stuff scene.
Mm.
Like, I don't think it adds to the episode, and I don't think it adds to the character.
I agree.
So those scenes could be replaced. Structurally, though, as much as I dislike flashbacks, typically, and this is probably like the weeb in me. You watch I can't remember which anime I was watching, but I was watching a flashback and then it flashback in the flashback.
Ha!
And I was like, I can't. That was the moment I was like, I can't do flashbacks anymore.
That's fair.
Training arcs though, and training time skips, I'm cool with those. um, no, uh, they were quite well done, and they actually that was those were the one set of things where there was no scene wasted in this.
Mhm.
Everything shown was necessary, and help reframe the episode from being like just being about crew
Mhm.
to being about an abandoned way of life and finding a new place to belong or home.
I think, like, I think of the flashbacks. There's a, and it built well. Is that they didn't have a, they weren't wasted, and they placed them well, so we got the right reactions in the current time around them. Right, so we see, oh, here's exactly what Simon's given up. To River going, it's like, but you gave up everything for me, right? And this is where I was kind of going with the lost. Even though I agree, it's not the right word. The bitterness around it, uh, because it took River saying, "You've given up everything for me." I think to kind of clear some of that bitterness. It's like, no, this is everything to me.
Mm.
None of that other stuff mattered, right? And again, you see that moment. You see him, basically giving up his entire life to literally going to give up his life for his sister, and to not have that, again, just that weight around him and Mal just felt kind of lifted at the end of the episode again.
Mm-hmm.
It's that realization. It's like, oh, I actually do have what matters, and so many people don't realize.
You know, I remember the burning scene um differently.
Mm.
Like the wordage that he used when he got on to the platform that was River's on. Um I remember it more of a like fine then, or so the wordage that he used, I found it far more striking and within character, but it actually gave me a positive feeling towards Simon where I had none before.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't like him as a character. I like him as
Yeah.
a plot.
Yeah.
But like him as a character. But so his wordage was light it,
Mm.
fully resolute.
Yeah.
Is like this is all that matters, and I'm here, and this is going to happen. Do it.
Yeah.
Um, and it actually made me appreciate him as a character.
Mm. Yeah, because I'm kind of with you too. I remembered it slightly different, but I mean that's probably just time.
Yeah.
Uh, but no, it was definitely absolutely steadfast. And it's interesting because before that, we were talking, like, Mal was talking about Simon's like, no, he didn't run. He's not a coward.
Mhm.
Right. But whereas we've kind of had that, isn't he though? But just all of these interactions throughout this episode shows like, no, he's not. Like, he's just not the big damn heroes.
Mhm. Ain't we just?
No, he knows what he did. Like, he's got conviction. And I mean, we've always kind of known that, but it's shown very clearly here. And again, Mal sees him as part of his crew because he respects that. He respects the strength, and even if it's a different strength.
Well, I recognize, or I think that Mal recognizes that uh, Simon looks to his sister how Mal looks to his crew. Like there was a line there as well.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's
Yeah.
just ends up being framed all in what is home and where is home.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't. I'll tell you one thing though. It's happy there wasn't any Sheridaning in this episode. In fact, I really liked
Young River.
Young River. Like there was playfulness there, but there was a matter of fact, I'm far more mature than I let on kind of situation, but also I'm still a kid.
Yeah. Which is good because if they Sharoned her in any way, like that would absolutely have ruined
No,
everything we know about River.
little River's acting was far better than older River's acting as if she was a young girl. Just saying.
Oh, I mean, I agree, and I'm glad we generally don't see too much of, Summer Glau trying to be young River. um, no, she it was just completely believable. She was definitely one to play. It was all about the independence coming and eating Simon on
Mhm.
dinosaurs. But also you get that quick. It's like, yeah, no, that's just wrong. Like the way Simon described River in the first episode, they nailed that with that flashback. It was exactly what he described.
Well,
Right.
and then they even showed it with River immediately learning a dance just by observing for 10 seconds.
I was gonna say the exact same thing. It's like, that she takes in everything and can act on it, and
Well,
with
this
great.
well yeah, and this is where they're finally pushing through and they're like giving us a little bit of answers here. It's not just because I still think she's hyper intuitive,
Mhm.
but there's definitely something more there. Um Possibly like psychic or something, reading minds, or it could. This isn't high sci-fi enough for them to say she's so hyper intuitive and reads people so well she can tell what they're thinking through their um, like micro movements.
Yeah.
That's not this kind of series. You'd
Mhm.
expect something like that in like Star Trek.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this alien race can do that thing. But
Yeah.
in this, like, you're definitely beginning to wonder, is there like a psychic thing going on?
Mm. So there's one part in particular about that. So I kind of want to talk about. I was wanting to go into that anyway. So early in the episode, they did kind of the same editing issue that we talked about. Where is it editing or is she sensing something else?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have her kind of starting to freak out at the same time we're seeing what's happened to Book. At the same time her brother's getting captured, right? We can kind of get that. So it's kind of, is this just editing or is she picking up on something?
Hmm.
Okay, well, let's leave that to just weird editing choices for now.
Yeah.
Simply because anything else, unfortunately, is headcanon. And then we go into her basically knowing Ruby's, was it Ruby? Was that her name?
Yes.
Um, Ruby's backstory. And that one there, I can straight up go, it's like, okay, no, that one there, that could be the hyper aware,
Hmm.
right? Based off of the dance. It's like, it's a small place. There's going to be clues around. She could probably pick something up. It was really the conversation with the patron that
Yeah.
really goes, okay, what?
Like what's going on? 'Cause, I mean, technically speaking, again, this could be headcanon, and is more likely to be headcanon. The only explanation that I could give for that would be like this worldly, um, would be she's so hyper aware and she heard somebody else talking about it,
Mhm.
but they didn't even introduce this character until that scene.
Yeah.
So, like any explanation I can give for it, um, would just be hypotheticals.
Hmm.
Like we're at a point where you go from like, yeah, I think you encapsulated it well. We start out with what we've seen before, the weird editing choices, is it not, into like she knows something no one said.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they ramped it up during the course of this.
Yeah, exactly. It's yeah, it really starts making you question. This is where I go back to the idea of like we kind of talked about this. It's like I really think a lot of this stuff is early because I think the first season was supposed to be completely about River.
Well, I mean,
Like I think
most
she was
most of these first seasons unveil the major like overarching plot.
yeah. So it's and they just ramp it up so well and again in a believable way. But yeah, we definitely know there's questions, and this episode raises again a lot of questions. Again, now we've got questions about book as well. It's just
Mm-hmm.
where is this going? Um, uh, I do want to say the dance scene is probably like it's one of those scenes that's burned into my mind
Mm.
when she does that because it's just this is the first time that we see her being almost comfortable, for lack of a better term. Like
Okay, yeah.
she seems like herself. She's just able to enjoy what's going on. Everything messed up with her head melted away, and seeing Simon's reaction to her reaction is just one of those like little heartwarming things. It hits in the feels. um, it's always been a standout scene to me because of that. Um,
I've always passed that one by. Of course, I'm a little bit more uh action oriented.
hmm,
So the scene that's burned in my mind is like Jane hanging from the ship and the like uh it's his will you should be worrying about situation.
such a good line.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the non Simon and River uh dialogue was weak until that point.
Yeah,
There's a few good lines, but like that really kind of like a nice little cherry on top.
yeah, yeah. That's exactly it. That whole scene was that again.
Hmm.
Just tied everything together. Because I mean, like obviously at this point, Simons thinks like he has absolutely no reason to think anyone's coming back. Right? Like, why would he? He's sure that everyone hates him there because he doesn't He doesn't understand their world.
Definitely
Doesn't know.
not.
Yeah. Right, and just in that way that you don't know, he can't see that some of the stuff they're doing, it is respect. It just feels like it's insulting, but that's how they get along. Yeah, they build it up, everything around that well to show. I don't know. His eyes, I think, are opened.
At least I think he knows there's a place finally.
Mhm.
And I think he's finally beginning to learn that they're not just going to like toss him to the Alliance or, you know, space or like just leave them on a rando planet.
Yeah.
Because he's part of the crew.
Yep. I do like that. It's like, oh, sure, the one time I could have been useful, nowhere near.
Well, I mean, the compounding coincidences for this episode to even happen. Just like it just bugs me so much.
So,
Like it's more than what you would get normally.
see, I never felt it as coincidental, other than the actual incident of them being captured.
It's like Book gets shot, needs a doctor. The doctor was kidnapped because he's a doctor. Um, so they go to the Alliance and they reveal Book because they need a doctor. Like everything is specifically related around injury and like medical stuff in such a way that it seems too stacked.
So, guess let's look at it. See, I don't think it's coincidental because I can see the through line that caused it. It didn't feel random to me.
Mm.
So, um, the through line being okay. We have we have River, and well, she's a bit of a handful. We know this. Probably not good to have her around when you're trying to do crime. Right. So Mal saying go really makes sense. Like, let's just take this possible liability out of here. Plus, we're doing a crime. Who knows what can happen? Right, so them going off, much like Inara and Kaylee were already off, makes sense. Book has always been questionable to me. Him being there, I don't know, maybe it's just knowing how to handle the animals or what have you. Him being around during the gunfight, again, makes sense.
What's more like he got shot and they needed a doctor, but they didn't have the doctor because the doctor was taken because he's a doctor. So they had to go get a doctor.
No, so the doctor was taken because he was a doctor, yes, but that situation again happened logically. They were nowhere near the crew. This is the first time they've really been outside of the
Oh, I don't have a
Serenity.
problem with him being taken. That's the primary plot of this episode. I'm
Yeah.
having a problem with everything else. With Book being shot and them needing a doctor and couldn't find a doctor, so they had to go and reveal something mysterious about Book because they needed a doctor. Like,
So someone getting shot in that situation makes sense. The inciting incident of him being captured is the only part that I still say is coincidental because again, they set up the fact that there was the Alliance ship as the next closest thing. That was mentioned well before they needed it.
I'm just saying it's bad writing.
Um, No, I
It's
don't.
terrible
No, no,
writing.
no, 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 no. It would have been bad writing if they didn't set those things up. Those little one-liners is what saves it from being bad writing.
But the
And
fact that it's just these layered coincidences that like allow like everything is hinged on the need of medical attention in like multiple different ways.
it's
It's just dumb. I'm just saying it's
it's a,
dumb.
see, I think we're using coincidence differently here. is what I feel like. It's convenient, but I don't think it's coincidence. Like, it's not.
Okay, it's super
Oh, I
convenient
have
to the
two.
plot over and over and over again. I will change my terminology because you changed your terminology earlier for me.
It's a. It's yeah. It didn't bother me because again, it felt very logical. It didn't feel forced. It again, if they had the chance to find Simon, they would have just done that. But I mean, it's the same thing as how do we take out Jane? Well, we drug him up before there's going to be a gunfight.
No, I look at that different. Uh,
I think the only part around it that I think where I could see like and it feels logical to me. I think the bigger part that stands out is they wanted to have a way to show this with book, but not enough to make it its own episode. I still don't think it felt coincidental, but it it needed to be done to introduce that side of him without or his importance or whatever it is about him, or
here's
that
my
there is some.
question. Oh no. Um, let's say that you found an abandoned ship with a crazy guy upon it,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden a carrier comes by and apprehends the entire crew and starts interviewing them.
Mm.
Would not that investigatory body do ident scans of everyone on board?
Mm.
Would that
Yeah.
not be the first thing they did with like ident scan? Like I don't like the way that this episode is laid out, but I just realized that as a whole because they know who Mal is. They somehow got his entire service record. Why wouldn't they do the shepherd?
Mm.
And like if I were and to fill that plot hole, you would have had to completely write that scene different. Like, oh, we see who you are, and we can drop you off at the next port.
I think the interesting way to do that, the way to do that without having as much of a plot hole, yeah, because no, now that you mention it,
Well,
it's just like,
the way to do it is the way they did in this episode. I just don't like the
mhm,
fact that it was in this
yeah,
episode when everything was like doctor, doctor, doctor. But
yeah,
the fact that I just realized that,
yep, nope, and I didn't at all until you said that.
yeah, I just.
Mhm.
So,
I mean, the only other thing I could think is like, what if there's the idea of, you know, having two different forms of ID or something, but uh, nope, that is valid.
well, I mean, it was Buddy's first tour.
Mm, yeah.
Maybe everybody on board failed to do like the basic thing of checking ID. Like it that way. Tell me why. Anyways, that's a serious plot hole for you to drink in.
Yeah, no, that is definitely
Sad about that now.
yeah, no, like I
I
hadn't
like that
considered,
episode.
hadn't noticed it. Overall, I think they. Now I've got to think about that.
So this, I don't know, to kind of recap everything, this episode, I feel like was the right time to explore Simon and River
Mhm.
and start accelerating like people's personal conspiracies and theories regarding what was done to her
Yeah.
and actually like explaining that Simon is a d-bag but like he's an altruistic one. Like
he,
he has
he's a
complex
D-bag. Yeah.
motivations.
He's a D-bag because this is not his world. He literally has no idea how to do with it. This made me think is like, maybe he's not intentionally a D-bag. He just literally has no idea how to interact.
Yeah, it's just cultural differences. That's all it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And
And
that
he doesn't have someone to guide him like Inara did in Shindig when all of a sudden she got the attention of all the boys.
the yeah, so the like the 20 minutes of the episode that were surrounding Simon River definitely like top notch in this.
Yeah.
That's what I have to say.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay. Thanks again for huddling around the second wall with us here tonight. Join us next time as we continue our discussion of Firefly. Please join the conversation in the comments, on social media, or at our Discord, where we would love to get your thoughts. And of course, if you like what we do, please share us with your friends.